Hi guys, so for today's video I'm going to be filming a counterpart to a video I did last week, and that's going to be the worst traits associated with your zodiac sign. Obviously, I know some of you will disagree with probably everything I say. I know people can take offense if I say something negative about their sign, but then this video is probably not for you. Instead, I recommend my video, Best Traits Associated with Your Zodiac Sign. Right here-ish. Also, I try not to base stuff off of personal experience for the most part and my own relations with people, but at the same time, I feel like that's a little more accurate when you know several people of the same sign and they all have similar traits than it is to just get something, out of a book or a magazine or an encyclopedia. It's astrology in the dictionary. So let's bounce right into this video and just get started. Sorry, Pisces, but we're gonna start with Aries. So for Aries, I think that their worst trait would be that they can be a bit self-absorbed. Aries can kind of be in their own world, sometimes like very focused on themselves, and that can come across as being self-absorbed to other people around them, and I think that that is probably their worst quality, something I've noticed in certain Aries, but it's, they have a lot of great qualities too. All the signs do. I should just relax and just say what I mean. Taurus, personally, I don't really see this out there too often. I think that Taurus can be a little bit judgy, a little bit judgmental, and that's what I would say their worst trait is, because maybe it's just my own personal experience, but I've noticed that some Taurus people can have certain, I think maybe it goes along with the stubbornness that's commonly associated with the sign, but they can have their own beliefs or ideas of things, and if something isn't meeting that, it can be hard for them to kind of open their mind and change their opinion on things, making them at times a bit judgmental. Gemini, this will probably forever be the worst trait in my mind associated with Geminis. But something I notice is that Geminis tend to exaggerate a lot, and it can be really great because when they're social, it can really add to what they're saying and can make them seem more interesting and blah, blah, blah. But the problem for me is when they exaggerate and it's almost bordering on a lie. I've noticed that with several Geminis. I know they'll tell me something and then I'll come to find out it's really not the truth. So I feel like they can definitely exaggerate things at times. And to me, I find that to be their worst trait. Cancer. For sure, a Cancer's worst trait would be the fact that they can't let go of things and they perseverate. I feel like a Cancer, if they are wronged or if they perceive that they are wrong or slighted in any way, can really hold on to that for a long time. It could come to the point where they want to seek some form of revenge, but I think that holding on to that and not letting that go and not giving people maybe a second chance, also not always being open with the fact that they're kind of holding on to something that they are upset about. It could be rightly so, but sometimes it's a bit much. Leo. I think Leo's worst trait would be this obsession with how other people kind of perceive them. I think that a lot of Leos have this really hard time of letting, I wouldn't even say their guard down, but so much as this mask that they've created and the way that they want the world to see them, the way that they want the world to perceive them, that can be their worst trait because you're not always seeing their true self unless you really truly know a Leo. But they have this thing, I think it has a lot to do with their ego, but they want people to see them in a certain light, and they will do a lot to make sure that that's how they're coming across, and I just feel like it can seem a bit fake at times, and also it must be exhausting. I just feel like if Leos are just chill, I don't know, I just think that's their worst trait. Just have this way that they want the world to kind of see them, and they'll go out of their way to do that and kind of put their true selves on the back burner. Virgo. For Virgo, I think that their worst trait would be, it kind of goes along with their best trait, which is interesting, but I think it could definitely take on a happier light or a more positive light or a more negative light. So it would be how detail oriented they are, to the point of sometimes being rigid about it, having to have everything set in their own way. And the other thing that goes along with this is they can really focus in on details and be critical, because Virgos, they have their own way of doing things and they're not always open to other people's take on that. I don't think that it's intentional. I just think that they don't always trust that other people will do things to the level that they're gonna do things, if that makes sense. Libra. I think a Libra's worst trait would be this constant need to keep their options open. They have this I think it goes with the fact that they have a really hard time making a firm decision, but it's just that they can't, it's not even just this wishy-washiness, it's more or less like they always have like one foot out the door. I think that that can just be frustrating, that they will never, or it just takes them a long time to fully make a firm decision and stick with it and not constantly be wondering and keeping an eye open, again, keeping one foot out the door. Scorpio's worst trait. Personally, I think a Scorpio's worst trait would be they can be very set in how they view things, and I think that it can be tough for them to change their opinions on things. I mean, it's probably better than constantly changing their mind, but I think that the problem is that they don't accept others' opinions very easily. So I think a Scorpio can just be very rigid in their own beliefs, and it can become intense because they do have this intensity within them, and I think that they can just be very black and white and not always see everybody's opinions, or maybe they just don't choose to. I feel like they think their beliefs or opinions are right, and so they don't want to even acknowledge anything else. Next we have Sagittarius. And when it comes to Sagittarius' worst trait, I actually see this in myself a lot because I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart, but it would be their inconsistency. I think Sagittarius is a type of sign that's constantly on to the next thing, having new plans, having new ideas, and I think that it's hard for them to stay consistent with what they've already started, and it can, it could be frustrating to deal with. I'm sure it is for you guys on my YouTube channel. I'm always constantly changing things up and never being consistent with anything. A Sagittarius' worst trait is their inconsistency, because it can just be, they can just kind of be all over the place and very scattered, and they'll say one thing and then do another, and they won't follow through, you know. Next we have Capricorn. Personally, I think a Capricorn's worst trait is probably their negativity. I often see the word pessimistic associated with Capricorn, and I guess I am a Capricorn, so I don't always agree with that, because maybe I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart. I tend to try to be optimistic, but at the same time, I feel like Capricorns are always expecting the worst, and I definitely do that. So I feel like inwardly I can be very negative, and maybe that's what I mean, but I think a Capricorn can just be very down on themselves, pessimistic, negative on the inside. Maybe they don't show it, maybe you don't know it, but they can just be very like approaching the world as like this dark, terrible place, and they can just have a hard time getting their head out of that darkness and just like being light and positive and just go with the flow. And I mean, Capricorns are not go with the flow, but yeah, I just think that they can get kind of sucked into like that negative side of things a little too much. Even if they don't show you, it can definitely be a part of their personalities. Next we have Aquarius. Aquarius, I think their worst trait, honestly, is their detachment from emotions. I think that they can be very like giving and kind people. I'm not saying they're mean or anything, but I think that they have this block up, and it can be hard to really connect with an Aquarius unless they want you to. I think that they can be very picky about who they choose to spend their time with, which is fine, but I think one of the worst traits is that they don't always give people a real chance to get to know them and get to really connect with them. They kind of decide who they connect with, and which again, I mean, that's up to them, but I feel like that can be one of the worst traits, is that they can be very detached and kind of keep people, at an arm's length, even if they don't seem like they are. Like, they can come across as very friendly, but they really won't let you in. Like, they invited you to the party, but they're not going to let you in the VIP room. You know what I'm saying? Next we have Pisces. I really don't want to go with the emotional card, because that's like literally what everybody says, right? So when it comes to Pisces, I think that sometimes, not all Pisces, but a lot of Pisces can fall victim to the whole, like, woe is me card, self-pity, and I think that would be their worst traits, feeling like they can kind of play the victim sometimes, or even if they're not, like, openly doing it, sometimes they can just feel like, why does this always happen to me? Like, I get the worst luck, like, stuff along those lines. I feel like that can kind of be one of the worst traits of a Pisces, not, like, really just kind of assuming that everything bad always happens to them. I mean, maybe it does, but I feel like they can just be a little bit self-pitying at times, and it can just kind of be a bit of a drag, and they can kind of just perceive the world in a way that, like, can be just a little bit of a drag sometimes. So that is the worst trait associated with all the zodiac signs. I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with me, so if you do, let me know in the comments down below. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments down below. I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day or night.
I'm getting higher than a Pisces. Can't pick up the phone 'cause you pick me up so nicely. Drop it down low, like that ass was made.